Welcome to UO Today. I'm Paul Pepis, Director of the Oregon Humanities Center. My guest today is Michael Schill, the 18th President of the University of Oregon. Schill began his tenure on July 1st, 2015, and was formally invested into office on June 1st, 2016. He previously served as the Dean and Harry N. Wyatt Professor of Law at the University of Chicago Law School, as well as Dean of the UCLA Law School. Welcome. Thanks for coming back.
It's great to be here. I understand this is a tradition. The first show of the year is the president every year, so hopefully we'll have a long and engaging track record here.
This is just the second of 10 or 20 interviews I'll do with you.
That sounds great.
We, as you say, a year ago we sat here before you started your first academic year. You've now had a year at the helm of the University of Oregon. How's it been? What have you accomplished? What's this year been like for you?
Oh my God, that's a it's a compound question, and lawyers don't like compound questions. So, but let me start by saying how has it been? I mean, number one, it's gone by so quickly. It's hard to imagine, but it feels very much when I call my friends from out of the area and they say, "Well, how's it been?" I tell them it's really been like a honeymoon, and it's been a honeymoon that's gone on for 15 months. In public higher education, one doesn't expect that, and I don't expect it to go on forever. But I'm just having a great time, and I think it's been for me a wonderful experience. I've really very much enjoyed being part of the community and really watching the community come together around a set of core objectives of increasing our academic quality and our research quality, increasing our efforts with regard to student success, and lastly, increasing our diversity and engagement of our students. So what I've enjoyed the most is seeing people coming together around a shared vision.
Are there a couple of accomplishments of the past year that you're particularly proud of that you'd like to tell us about?
Well, I mean, I don't know if you'd say they're it's only a year, right? So there's lots of things that are happening. But among the things that I've been really pleased with is that we've established or created a whole new leadership in the university, which is really quite astounding. I mean, the number of new people, both in Johnson Hall, but also in the various schools. So last year we hired 3 new vice presidents, and then we also hired 3 new deans. This year we'll be hiring 2 new deans and a provost. So most academic institutions, as you know, Paul, they change slowly over time. It's actually one of the great strengths of higher education is that we don't change just based on whim or fancy, but we're actually moving quite quickly to change leadership, and partly that was because when I came in, there were a lot of interim people. And when you have a lot of interim people, they're great people, but they don't feel they can make decisions that bind their successors. And so now we're in a position to really move the university forward and make changes. And so that's one of the things I'm really pleased about. I'm also pleased about sort of the increased commitment with respect to academic excellence at the university. I'm pleased with the fact that we have begun increasing the number of tenure-track faculty at the university. I'm delighted that we were able to announce the Oregon Commitment, which is a goal of increasing graduation rates, 4-year graduation rate, by 10 percentage points, and we were able to make a $17 million investment. And I guess, I could go on and on about the various things, but what I'm the most pleased about of everything is that I think we've changed the tone at the university from one where we were sort of, at a certain level, we were a little bit like a circular firing squad, and now we're sort of all moving in the same direction, or as close to moving in the same direction as a university in the city of Eugene in the state of Oregon can be. And I've been really, really pleased with that. And if I can, I just want to say one other thing. It's not false modesty that when I talk about achievements that we've made, these have been group efforts. They haven't been my efforts alone. I mean, I've been a part of it, and I'm not going to fool people by saying, or try to pretend, I'm falsely modest in saying I wasn't a part of them. But a president can't do these things alone. A president relies on great administrators, great faculty, great staff, alumni who care and are willing to contribute of their time and their resources, and also students who want to move forward. And so this has been just a great group effort.
So as you are beginning your second year, are there any particular aspirations that you have for this year, goals for this year that you're hoping to achieve?
Yeah, so there's some mundane ones, and then there's some which are nonetheless important, and then there's some aspirational ones. So obviously what we need to do is we need to continue working to make this place a great academic institution. Part of that means we've set a goal, which is really very ambitious, of hiring 80 to 100 tenure-related faculty, research active faculty over the next 5 years. So we've started that. We're up, I think, net 12 compared to last year. We need to pick up the pace of that hiring. So that's number one. Number two is to facilitate research on this campus, both by fundraising for research and by setting the right tone for research. And I want to continue doing that. One of the things that we're doing is we're meeting with our scientists, talking about how can we establish applied science on this campus, how we can increase applied science, which will enrich our basic sciences. So that's another thing. I'm really looking forward to making progress on the demands of the Black Student Task Force, which, as you know, they gave us a list of 12 demands. And as I said then, and I believe today, many of those things are things that we want to do, and really vast majority of them, and we need to make methodical progress on them. And there's some things that will take more than a year. We've already done 5 or 6 of them. We need to do work on the remainder of them. So that's another thing. And then, at the more mundane but important level is we need a new budget model on campus, right? The departments need to have a reliable and stable source of revenue. And that's not meaning new money coming into the university, but it is talking about, well, how do we divide the existing resources in a way that is fair and sustainable on campus. So I'm looking forward to that. And then, as I mentioned in my investiture speech, one of the things that I think we need to do, and one of the things I'm looking forward to doing is trying to convince the people of the state of Oregon, something that we know really well here, but I'm not sure the entire state is on the same page, the value of investment in higher education, that the future of the state of Oregon is really going to be determined by the quality of our higher education system, and in particular, the most elite, best university in the state, which is the University of Oregon.
So let me ask you in detail about some of the various things you just said. So let's start with excellence.
Okay.
So last week in your open mic column, which is a periodic column that you put out where you speak to the community, you said, and I quote, "We must constantly strive for excellence in everything we do." And I think most of us would applaud that goal. But it's also clear from reading the column that you're sensitive to concerns that this focus on excellence could just become a kind of an empty slogan.
Right.
Just excellence, excellence, excellence. So how are you addressing that concern? That is to say, how are you going to ensure that this abstraction, a good abstraction, but an abstraction nonetheless, actually is something that we accomplish?
So, well, a couple things. One is, why did I write the column in the first place? And so I wrote that column last spring, but it was so long and it was the end of the year that people around me refused to do anything with it, so I had to hold on to it. I like writing these things, so for me, writing is cathartic. It's probably because, at base I'm an academic. And so that was in reaction to overhearing somebody say that, we shouldn't care about external validation of excellence, that all we should care about is our own view of what we are. And, that is antithetical to what a great academic institution is. And I wanted to write about that. And what I wanted to say to people is, no, actually, the great thing about academic institutions is we have peer review. And peer review is outside peer review as well as inside peer review. So that means there's standards, and there really are standards. It's not all, it's not all relative, right? There's standards of excellence. They exist. They're different for different disciplines, and we need to be aware of that. And so, for example, one of the things that's kicked up a fuss in some parts of the United States at some universities has been academic analytics, right? When you use metrics based upon whether it's citations or whether it's number of books, whatever, and saying, well, that doesn't apply to us. And it doesn't apply to equally well to every type of academic enterprise, but it applies pretty well to a number of them. And then the answer is, if it doesn't apply to a particular discipline, numbers of citations, they don't pick up books or performances, then it's the duty and obligation of the people within that discipline to state, well, what is the metric that we are going to be compared on? How does our discipline define excellence? And then we as an institution need to meet that level of excellence. And if we're not meeting that level of excellence, we need to either change what we're doing, or if we can't meet that level of excellence, indeed if it's the opposite of excellence, then we should be closing down that activity. And that's something academic institutions are, as you know, horrible at, right? We're always good at starting things new. We're very rarely good at looking and sort of pruning and increasing the quality of laggards. But so my point was, we need to do that. So what do we need to do? We do program reviews. We need to look at those program reviews. We spend a ton of time doing the program reviews, but do we do anything with them? We need to actually understand what we're doing, hold people accountable for those program reviews. And that will be, so how do you do that? That's one of the things you do with a budget model. Instead of saying the dollars flow where the students go, instead we have a level of holding the various parts of the university accountable for how they do, and money flows with excellence.
So you also spoke about the priority of raising the number of faculty. So the clusters of faculty excellence initiatives were started a couple of years ago. Give us a progress report on that particular strategy.
So this is something that's actually not that well known. There were 10. We've actually launched 5 already. We haven't done big announcements over them. So the first one out of the box was the obesity prevention cluster, mostly in the ed school. That has been 4 out of the 6 people have already been hired into that, and they're here. The second one, with the gift from our board chair and his wife, Chuck Lillis and Gwen Lillis, is in volcanology. They fell in love with volcanology, and I think what they fell in love with was both the science of volcanology, but also what the faculty of volcanology said to Chuck. What they said is, with some modest investment, we can be the best in the country. So he invested, and so we've launched that one. Genome function, so our National Academy of Science scholar, one of the best in the country, Eric Selker, is leading a cluster in the basic science of genomics. So we're very, very excited about that one. Chris Doe, our Howard Hughes scholar, is doing a mini cluster in neurons to minds, which could grow into a major cluster. So that's another one. We have a sustainable materials one, which is taking chemistry and environmental sciences, putting that together. And so those are 5, I think that counts, that number's 5. But then in addition, we've had this idea of doing cluster hires. We're starting to see it filter into the schools. And I love that. So your dean, Andrew Marcus, is working on 2 clusters within the College of Arts and Sciences. One, a cluster of African American studies, and secondly, which will bridge the humanities and the social sciences. And then the second one is in environmental humanities. And so that's really exciting. And then what we're going to do in Johnson Hall is we're going to look at that and sort of say, well, is there ways that we can add resources, if we want to add additional schools and parts of the university to that. So I think it's very exciting. One thing I think we have not been great at is we pride ourselves at this university with interdisciplinarity, and I think we justly should be pleased with the way we do research. It's partly, I think, a function of being not big, not small, and resource constrained, that we look for ways to make partnerships. On the other hand, when we've got a lot of good things going on in lots of places, unless we don't put them together to make a whole. So for example, one thing that I think we can do, and one thing I'm excited about is, and I've asked the provost to look into, is we have strength in lots of different parts of the university in areas touching on environmentalism, right? The law school's got 3 faculty members who are terrific. The business school, best green business. Green chemistry started here, really, really strong. Environmental humanities, incredibly strong here, gonna get stronger over time. Environmental studies. So you add all of this together, we should be able to branch the whole university into not just a mini cluster or a cluster, but a crowd, right? And I think that could be a really great thing for the university.
Exciting. So you mentioned one challenge was going around convincing the state of Oregon about the value of what we do. So you were in Salem last week meeting with legislators?
Yes.
How's that going?
I go quite a bit, actually.
How's that going? Are you making that argument? Are you persuading them about the importance of what we do for the state of Oregon?
You know, the proof will come in the next legislative session, and the next legislative session, it's really interesting. I've talked to people in Salem and also people around the state. I don't think there's ever been a year where the pendulum could swing so widely in terms of what our situation could be in higher education. You know, and it's all related to Measure 97, which is the gross receipts tax. The state right now, as you know, is facing a $1.4 billion deficit if there's no revenue enhancement. And so everything rides on this measure. Now, I can't take a position on it. I'm a public employee, and I'm being very careful not to take a position on it. But I'm also an empiricist, and I can tell you what the 2 worlds will look like. So if Measure 97 passes, there'll be additional revenue into Salem, and we will be competing with the other parts of the state for additional revenue, and we'll be looking at an enhancement to state support. Because remember, we are among the most poorly funded public higher education systems in the state, and our school is among the very poorest. We're second from the bottom by just a little in terms of the amount per student that we get even within the state. So that's one that's one possible world. The other possible world is one where Measure 97 doesn't pass and the state doesn't figure out a way to increase revenue. And then we're going to be looking at cuts. And my job as president, and the job of presidents all over the state, is to step in and make sure that higher education doesn't fall to the bottom of the list, which is where we normally do, right? One of the problems is, and you hate to be in this situation where you're arguing, well, you should be funding us ahead of K through 12, or you should be funding us ahead of Medicaid, or you should be funding us ahead of prisons. I mean, you know, maybe one of those I would want to be ahead of and I could articulate. But, you know, it is true, what would be a small dent in that budget deficit would be absolutely a train wreck for us. And so we have to try to articulate that. Going back to your question is, well, are people listening? People tell me they value higher education, and it's not absolutely clear whether the state legislators will act on that because they have a lot of competing demands. I'm hopeful.
Obviously, in either case, the question of our budgets is an important one, and now I'm particularly interested in thinking about it from the student's point of view. Mm-hmm. As you well know, our students are very concerned about rising tuition costs. Talk a little bit about the efforts that you've undertaken to address that concern, and and how you reply, you respond to the students that say, what you just said sounds to me like tuition's going to go up and I'm not going to be able to afford to come. How do you respond to that?
Tuition's going to go up, period.
Okay.
Okay, stop. The tuition is going to go up. Our costs are going up, right? We're going to face, because the state has not funded the retirement program, we're going to have a $6 million hit to our budget next year. That'll be compounded by another $6 million hit to our budget in 2 years, and another one in 2 years after that. Okay, $18 million. How are we going to get resources? The state budget could go up, it could fund us more, but we just were talking about the possibility we could be getting a cut rather than an increase. Our donors give us money, but typically donors don't give for operating costs, they give for new programs. We can tighten our belts and cut, and we did last year, right? We laid off, or we didn't renew a number of people, faculty, non-tenured faculty, as well as staff. There's a limit to how much we can do that. So you look at what we can get federal research money, but that's not going to put professors in the class. So I'm not an alchemist, right? I can't take stones or water and turn it into gold. So we are tuition dependent. Now, what do we do to maintain affordability? So a few things. One is we enhance our graduation, our timely graduation. I mean, I'm constantly amazed by the fact that our students will protest at board meetings a $300 to $400 tuition increase, but yet what they should be protesting is the fact that we have a 49%, now it's 50% four-year graduation rate. Because compare $400 a year to $10,000 to $20,000 or more dollars that they're spending by not graduating on time. That's what they need to be doing. That's the best way to maintain affordability. The other thing that we can do with affordability, though, is scholarships. So we are fundraising. And here's the thing that I don't think we fully understand, or that not everybody understands. If you're a poor person from Oregon, affordability in terms of tuition is not a problem. We have a program called Pathway Oregon. If you're in Pathway Oregon, which means you're Pell eligible and you have a 3.4 average or above, last year it was 3.0, you will get a free ride. It's your Pell Grant, we'll make up the difference in scholarships. So really 20% of our Oregonian students are getting a free ride under Pathway Oregon. So it's not, the issue of affordability is not about poor people, right? It may be about the middle class, but it's not about poor people. And I have no desire to raise tuition. It doesn't make me happy. When I go home, I don't say, hand me the malted milk balls and also let me raise tuition. We have to do it because we have to do it. Our costs are going up. So yeah, the answer to your question is tuition is going to go up next year. We will try to keep tuition increases limited. If we get cut by the state, or if we don't get an increase that's commensurate with these huge cost drivers, tuition could go up a lot and could go up dramatically if we get cut.
We'll keep our fingers crossed that doesn't
Absolutely.
happen. You mentioned the black students' demands and your efforts to address those. Bring us up to date on that, the progress there.
So we had, the students had about 12 demands. We set up 13 different task forces, which involved students, involved faculty and administrators, and some involved some members of the community. And we've done 5 or 6 of them already, and I sent out a note to the community, things like setting up an admissions opportunities program. And really, really good news, I'm going to look down to make sure I get the number right. Our percentage of African American students in this year's freshman class went up this year from 1.6%, which is sort of horrible, to 2.6%, which isn't great, but it's progress, right? It's a whole percentage increase. We went up, we didn't almost double, but got close to doubling our number of African American students in the freshman class. If we keep doing that, if we keep putting attention to developing the pipeline and then admitting students and encouraging them to come here, we can make good progress. So that's something we've done already. We've also established alumni groups which are going to be coming in and working with our students, something that the students wanted, different advisory groups involved. We have created an African American speaker series. As you probably know, I think virtually everybody in the country knows, we took the name of Frederick Dunn, off of one of our halls. Dunn was the head of the Ku Klux Klan here in Eugene, and we renamed it temporarily Cedar Hall. And then what we're going to do is name it after someone who does reflect our values. We're still considering what to do with Dede Hall, another building. But there's other things that we're working on, these things we don't have finalized yet. One is the students asked for a Black Cultural Center. We have land, we've identified land, we've visited other schools to look at their cultural centers. We're now putting together plans. We're looking at the feasibility of fundraising for this, looking at what sort of programming would go into it. And I anticipate later in the fall, I'll be making a decision about whether to go forward with that. We've been meeting about scholarships and fundraising for scholarships, and that is after the Fisher decision in Texas on affirmative action. We think there's a road in which we can fundraise for scholarships for African American students. We are looking to hire African American retention specialists to come in and work on advising our students. So there's a whole series of things, and I'm leaving out some that are important, but there's, this is a process, and indeed I'm having dinner tonight with the Black Student Task Force, and we're going to be reaching out to other African American groups on campus, and it's one of the areas where I'm extremely proud that at some universities where it just sort of blew up into finger pointing and nastiness, on this campus it has, at least thus far, been really an engagement process, a cooperation process, and we've made, I think, really tremendous progress. And as I said on day one, when the students went out and protested and when I joined them, is the things that they want, by and large, are things that a great university should be doing.
Excellent. Well, we have less than a minute left, so this is my last
Time's
question.
flying.
Time's flying. It's,
Can I have another half hour? No,
Anytime.
Go ahead.
My last question, share with us a memorable Eugene UO moment from your past year.
Oh, there were too many to just name a few.
Just choose a good one.
When I heard that Jerry Richmond got the Medal of Science, when I, saw the student in Pathway, Oregon, talk about her time here, at my investiture, when I saw my friends and my family and all the, faculty and students being, coming together. Those are just a few things. I could go on and on.
Well, thanks for all that you do and all that you have yet to do.
And today, this is memorable too.
Oh, of course. I look forward to having you back in a year to tell us about the progress that you made this coming year.
It's a deal.
Thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thanks, Paul.
We've been speaking with Michael Schill, President of the University of Oregon. I'm Paul Peppis. This is UO Today. Thanks so much for watching.